In today's episode, anti-Semitism and Russian propaganda amid escalation in the Middle East. They are Satanists. Israeli Prime Minister came up with an excuse for his crusade against Palestinians in Gaza Strip. Russian propaganda speculations regarding LGBTQ issues, an IDF soldier waving the Israeli flag with a rainbow. What could it possibly mean? Our analytical team at Detector Media is on constant watch, tracking the spread of the boldest fakes from Kremlin propaganda. I'm Vadym Miskyi, and for the next 10 minutes I'll guide you through the key facts. Let's get started. Stoltenberg has a new playbook. Only Jews supposedly suffer from the war in the Middle East. This manipulative anti-Semitic message has been promoted by Russian propagandists. The occasion was a statement by the NATO Secretary General about helping Israel. I would like to add that it is propagandists who always follow the Kremlin's guidelines.
Israel has the right to defend itself, and they have suffered horrendous terrorist attack over the weekend with many civilians killed. And Israel has the right to defend itself against these types of terrorist attacks. Then I also expect that, of course, when we see Israeli responses, it will be proportionate, and it is important as this conflict continues to do whatever is possible to prevent the loss of innocent civilian lives. I think it's also an important message that any nation or organization hostile to Israel should not try to utilize the situation we now see. We also see that, for instance, the United States has increased its military presence in the region to also send a clear message of deterrence to prevent escalation of this conflict.
Continuing the conversation about anti-Semitism in the Kremlin's propaganda, here is another manipulative message. While the Jew Blinken promises humanitarian support to the residents of Gaza, the Israeli military is unloading yet another shipment of weapons and missiles from the United States. But here's what Blinken actually said.
On the humanitarian situation in Gaza, I think it's first important to remember a fundamental issue that makes this complicated. Hamas continues to use civilians as human shields, something that's not new, something that they've always done, intentionally putting civilians in harm's way to protect them, to try to protect themselves or protect their infrastructure or protect their weapons. So that's one of the basic facts that Israel has to deal with. And of course, civilians should not be used in any way as the targets of military operations. They are not the target of Israel's operations.
Following the Kremlin's instructions, Russian propaganda openly compares Jews to Nazis. Here's a headline: Israel has turned Gaza into a concentration camp and declared a fight against humanoid animals. The terminology used by Hitler's associates and the Israeli defense minister is almost identical, they say. Here is another disgusting manipulative message from Russian propaganda. Hitler and Himmler would have applauded the current leadership of Israel if they had lived to see the day. In this way, propagandists are trying to divert the world's attention from the atrocities committed by Russian invaders in Ukraine. They are Satanists. According to Russian propaganda, the Israeli Prime Minister came up with this excuse for his crusade against Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. The Russian media continues to repeat similar manipulative messages referring to Israeli leaders.
To all their families, we don't stop any effort in order to bring them back, our brothers and sisters, people, men, women, children, babies. All those who were abducted by these satanic people.
Benjamin Netanyahu showed a photo of children killed by Hamas terrorists to US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Kremlin propagandists using the same methods developed during the atrocities committed by the Russian invaders in Ukraine called these photos fake.
So we did see photographs, videos that the Israeli government shared with us. Some I think has actually already been seen in public media. Others were new to me, and I think new to our team. It's hard to find the right words. It's beyond what anyone would ever want to imagine, much less actually see and, God forbid, experience. A baby, an infant, riddled with bullets. Soldiers beheaded. Young people burned alive in their cars or in their hideaway rooms. I could go on, but it's simply depravity in the worst imaginable way. It almost defies comprehension. And as I've been saying, to me, in the most immediate future, harkens back to ISIS and some of the very things we saw when it was on its rampage that thankfully was stopped.
To recap, the Israeli military found the bodies of 200 local residents in the Israeli settlement of Kfar Aza in the south of the country. Terrorists killed about 40 children, including infants. Russian propagandists have consistently made use of the problems of socially vulnerable groups, including LGBTQ. Here is one of the ridiculous manipulative messages. An IDF soldier is waving the Israeli flag with a rainbow. What could it possibly mean?
Özür dilerim, Mısır'a çıktıkları zamanda o 48'deki o sürgünü yeniden tecrübe etmiş olacaklar. Şu an kameraman arkadaşım zoom yapıyor. Kamerayı gören birisi.
Civilized countries respect the rights of LGBTQ people. This is President Joe Biden with First Lady Jill Biden at the 2023 Human Rights Campaign National Dinner. The American leader emphasized that the modern world should not allow any manifestations of intolerance.
A week ago, we saw hate manifested another way in the worst massacre of Jewish people since the Holocaust. More than 1,300 innocent lives lost in Israel, including at least 27 Americans. Children and grandparents alike kidnapped, held hostage by Hamas. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Innocent Palestinian families, and a vast majority have nothing to do with Hamas. They're being used as human shields. Folks, we have to reject hate in every form, because history has taught us again and again. Anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, homophobia, transphobia, they're all connected. Hate toward one group left unanswered opens the door for more hate toward more groups more often, readily. But here's what history shows. The antidote to hate is love.
Kremlin propaganda systematically uses the problems of sexual minorities to promote Putin's narrative of so-called traditional family values. Volodymyr Zelensky brought a sponsor of the Russian-Ukrainian war to the wounded soldiers of the armed forces of Ukraine. This manipulative message was being spread by Kremlin propagandists. This is how they mockingly called the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Mark Rutte, who was visiting Ukraine. By the way, Russian propaganda usually calls the war a special operation.
See you. Як хлопці? Як почуваєтеся?
Ми дуже хотіли з прем'єр-міністром Нідерландів
Visiting today.
друг нашої країни.
The Netherlands is allocating more than 100 million euros to be included in this year's aid package for Ukraine.
Візит Марка Рютте, прем'єр-міністра Нідерландів, його команди, наші перемовини. Є рішення щодо ракет для Петріотів. Нідерланди дають додаткові ракети. Ми сьогодні обговорили з Марком і інші спільні кроки для оборони України. Окрема увага з захисту Одеси, усього нашого півдня. Від Дунайських портів до портів Великої Одеси обговорили захист наших коридорів експорту у Чорному морі. Світ визнає глобальну роль України, гаранта продовольчої безпеки і чітко підтримує те, що ми маємо зберегти і посилювати. Це наше значення.
Western partners will continue to support Ukraine despite the Kremlin's hopes to the contrary.
We must continue to rush Ukraine what it needs to meet its urgent current challenges, even as we continue to develop Ukraine's combat capabilities to ward off future dangers. So we're here to dig deep to meet Ukraine's most urgent needs, especially for air defense and ammunition. I look forward to hearing about the new support packages that many countries here are preparing. And I'm proud that the United States will announce its latest security assistance package for Ukraine, valued at $200 million. It includes AIM-9 munitions for a new air defense system that we will soon deliver to Ukraine, as well as artillery and rocket ammunition, precision aerial munitions, anti-tank weapons, and equipment to counter Russian drones.
By promoting messages about the West, which is supposedly a participant in Russian-Ukrainian war, propagandists are trying to justify their frontline setbacks. Ukrainians are sincerely grateful to our Western partners for their support. It brings our victory closer. Stay with us to avoid falling prey to Kremlin propaganda. Have a great day.